I didn't know what I was seeing at first. My brain kept rejecting it, the way your eyes reject something that doesn't make sense in the middle of a familiar room. I stood at the end of that long hospital corridor, my sneakers squeaking against the linoleum, and I stared at my grandmother sitting alone in a plastic chair by the elevator bank. She had her purse on her lap, both hands wrapped around it, the way she always held it in public, tightly, like someone might take it. She was looking at the elevator doors, waiting. And there was no one else there. I turned around and looked behind me, half expecting to see my uncle coming out of a restroom or talking to a nurse. But the hallway was empty. The nurse's station was around the corner. The waiting area where the rest of my family had been sitting 20 minutes ago was empty too, except for a forgotten paper coffee cup on one of the chairs. I looked back at my grandmother. She was still watching the elevator. I remember my legs moving before I made any decision to move them. 6 months before that day, my grandmother, Grammy to me since I could talk, had been diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia. She was 79. She'd lived in the same house in Decatur, Georgia for 41 years, raised 3 kids in it, buried my grandfather in a cemetery 4 miles from the front door. She still made her own coffee every morning. She still called me on my birthday at exactly 7 a.m., same as she had since I was 6. She forgot things sometimes, where she put her reading glasses, whether she'd taken her evening pills. But she knew who I was, knew what day it was, knew the names of every neighbor on her street. The diagnosis scared everyone. I understood that. But what happened over the following months was something I still struggle to put into words without feeling the particular kind of sick that comes with betrayal you didn't see coming. My uncle, my mom's older brother, started coming around more. At first, I thought it was love. I actually thought that. He'd call Grammy twice a week, show up on Sundays with takeout, talk to her doctors like he was suddenly the most concerned person in any room. My mom noticed it too, and I think part of her was relieved. She'd been carrying most of the worry alone since the diagnosis, driving Grammy to appointments, checking in daily. Having her brother step up felt like the family finally pulling together. I was 28 at the time, working as a physical therapist at a rehab facility in Atlanta. I lived 40 minutes from Grammy's house. I had every other Friday off, and I started spending those Fridays with her. Sitting on her porch, driving her to the beauty supply store she'd been going to for 30 years. Watching Jeopardy in her living room with the volume too loud, because she refused to admit her hearing was going. She would talk during those visits. Really talk. About my grandfather, about what she wanted done with her jewelry, about how she wished the family would stop treating her like she was already gone. "I'm still here, Ellie," she said to me once, not looking away from the TV. "I can see it in everybody's eyes when they come. They're already saying goodbye." Her name for me was Ellie, short for Eleanor, my middle name, which she'd chosen herself. I didn't know how to answer her. So I just took her hand and we watched Jeopardy, and I let her shout out answers she mostly got right. In November, my uncle called a family meeting. He did it formally. Sent an actual email to me, my mom, my 2 aunts who live out of state, and my cousin who's in the military, and used the subject line, "Grammy's care plan going forward." I almost laughed at the subject line when I saw it. It sounded like something from a corporate memo. We met at my uncle's house on a Sunday evening. There was a printed document. There was a PowerPoint which he projected onto his living room wall. I'm not exaggerating. A PowerPoint. The presentation outlined 2 options. Option 1, Grammy stays in her house with rotating family check-ins and a part-time home health aide. Option 2, Grammy moves to Sycamore Ridge, an assisted living facility in Smyrna that my uncle had already toured and apparently already put her name on a wait list for. He had costs laid out. He had a timeline. He had a little section at the end titled Quality of Life Considerations that included a stock photo of elderly people doing a seated yoga class. My mom and I looked at each other across the coffee table. I asked the first question. Did anyone talk to Grammy about this? Silence. She should be part of this conversation, I said. It's her life. My uncle leaned back in his chair and did the thing he always does when he thinks someone is being naive. He let out a long breath through his nose and looked at the ceiling for a second before answering. Grammy's capacity to make decisions for herself is going to keep declining, he said. We need to be proactive. She's not incapacitated, I said. She's forgetful. There's a difference. He didn't acknowledge that. He moved to the next slide. I went home that night with a feeling in my chest I couldn't name. Not quite dread. More like watching something happen in slow motion that you know is going to end badly and not being able to stop it. Grammy did not want to move to Sycamore Ridge. She said this clearly multiple times to multiple people. She said it to my uncle when he took her to tour the facility in December. She said it to my mom on the phone. She said it to me, sitting on her porch in January with her coat on, because she refused to admit it was too cold to be outside. That place smells like a hospital in sadness, she said. I'm going to die in this house, Ellie, on my terms. I believed her. I also believed she had the right. But things had started happening by then that I didn't fully understand until later. My uncle had gotten Grammy to sign a document in October, just some medical paperwork, he told her. That turned out to be a durable power of attorney. I didn't find out about it until February, when Grammy mentioned it offhandedly, not seeming to understand its significance. I looked it up when I got home. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and I read about what a durable power of attorney means. Means when the grantor is deemed to lack decision-making capacity, the agent takes over, legally, completely. I called my mom, she hadn't known about it either. March came. Grammy had a follow-up appointment at Emory for her dementia evaluation, a standard 6-month check-in with her neurologist. My uncle volunteered to take her. My mom had a work commitment she couldn't move, and I was on the schedule at the rehab facility. Grammy said she'd be fine, that it was just a routine appointment, and my uncle seemed genuinely helpful about it. He even called the night before to confirm pickup time. I texted Grammy that morning, "Good luck today, I love you. Call me after." She texted back, "Will do, sweetheart," wearing my blue blouse. She always told me what she was wearing. I don't know why, she just did. The appointment was at 10:30. By 1 in the afternoon, I hadn't heard from her, which wasn't unusual. Sometimes she napped after appointments. At 2, I texted again. Nothing. At 3, I called. It rang to voicemail. I told myself not to spiral. Grammy forgot to call sometimes. She was probably home resting. At 4:15, my uncle texted me. Not Grammy. My uncle, appointment went fine. Grammy's all set. Something about the phrasing made me stop. Grammy's all set. Something about the phrasing made me stop. Grammy's all set. Not. She's home resting or just dropped her off. All set. Like a transaction that had been completed. I called Grammy again. Voicemail. I called my uncle. He answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful, no hesitation in his voice at all. "Hey, is Grammy home?" I asked. "She's being taken care of," he said. "What does that mean?" A pause. "We made a decision today, about her care." And then, very calmly, he told me. After the neurology appointment, instead of taking Grammy home, he had driven her to Sycamore Ridge. He'd arranged everything in advance. Her room was ready. He'd packed some of her things the week before when she'd been at church. He had a key. Grammy was already in the facility. She'd been there since noon. I remember asking, very quietly, "Did she agree to this?" "She didn't object as much as we expected," he said. I sat with that sentence for a long moment. "Put her on the phone," I said. "She's getting settled. It's been a big day for her. Put her on the phone right now." He said she was tired. He said I was going to upset her. He said this was what was best. I hung up. I was in my car before I was conscious of putting on my shoes. Sycamore Ridge is 45 minutes from my apartment without traffic. I made it in 32. I went to the front desk and asked for my grandmother's room number. The woman behind the desk, young, blonde, clearly used to family members arriving in various states of distress, looked at her computer screen and then at me. "Are you on the approved visitor list?" "She's my grandmother." "I understand that. I'm asking if you're on the approved list." I looked at her. "Who made the approved list?" She looked at her screen again. "The primary contact on file is," she said my uncle's name. I asked to speak to the facility director. The woman picked up the phone. While I waited, I texted my mom. Do you know what he did? She called me back in 40 seconds, which tells you everything about how well she knew. She didn't know. She started crying before I finished explaining. The director was a tall man in a gray suit who looked exhausted in the particular way that people look when they've had this conversation before and expect to have it again. I explained the situation. I told him my grandmother had not consented to this admission. I told him I was a licensed physical therapist with a clinical understanding of cognitive capacity and that Grammy's last neurological evaluation, which I had a copy of because I went to the appointment in September, showed she retained decision-making capacity for daily living activities. He listened. He was careful about what he said. He told me he couldn't discuss another resident's arrangements with someone not on the contact list, but that any family member had the right to sit with a resident. I can take you to her room, he said. Grammy was sitting in a chair by the window when I came in. The room was nice, I'll give my uncle that. There were flowers on the windowsill, the kind from a grocery store still in cellophane, and a quilt on the bed I recognized from her guest room. Someone had tried. She was looking out the window. When I came in, she turned, and for a moment her face cycled through something I can only describe as a person who has been trying very hard to hold themselves together and suddenly doesn't have to anymore. "Ellie," she said. I went and crouched in front of her chair and took her hands. "Are you okay?" I asked. She didn't answer that directly. What she said instead was, "I asked them to take me home. 3 times. I asked 3 times." I pressed my lips together. I was not going to cry in front of her. I was going to be steady because she needed someone steady. "Did anyone explain to you what this place is?" I asked carefully. "I know what it is," she said. "I've seen enough of them." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said he told me it was for some tests. More tests. That I'd be home by dinner. I sat on the edge of her bed, still holding her hands, and I thought about what my uncle had said on the phone. She didn't object as much as we expected. I thought about what that actually meant. That she had been told she was coming for a medical appointment. That she had been brought here under false pretenses. That the not objecting was confusion, not consent. I thought about the durable power of attorney, and then I thought about something my trainer in grad school had said once. During a seminar on elder care ethics, capacity is not binary. Someone can have dementia and still have the legal and moral right to refuse care. "Grammy," I said, "do you want to leave?" She looked at me like I'd said something almost funny. "Obviously," she said. "I want to be precise about what I did next because people have asked me since if I acted recklessly. My uncle certainly argued that. He still does. I did not drag my grandmother out of the facility. I did not make a scene in the hallway. I sat with her for an hour and a half while I made phone calls. I called my mom. She was already in her car driving from Macon. I called a patient advocacy line I knew about through my work, and they gave me the number for Georgia's long-term care ombudsman, which is the office that handles exactly these kinds of situations. I called them and left a detailed message. I also called an elder law attorney. I didn't have one in my contacts, but I knew one through a former colleague, and I texted that colleague and got the number in 10 minutes. The attorney, a woman with a calm, even voice who sounded like she had also had this conversation before, told me that placement in a memory care facility without the resident's informed consent and using a POA while the resident still retained decision-making capacity was legally actionable. She used the word actionable twice. She also told me that if Grammy stated clearly she wanted to leave and was not under immediate medical care, the facility was not legally a detention facility and could not hold her. I wrote that down. Then I went back to Grammy's room and I asked her, very clearly, in front of a staff member I had asked to be present, "Grammy, do you want to leave Sycamore Ridge today?" "Yes," she said. Clear as anything. "I want to go home." The staff member looked uncomfortable. I asked to speak to the director again. My uncle arrived before my mom did. I heard him in the hallway before I saw him. That voice, the same tone he uses in meetings when he's trying to project authority and control. He was talking to the director. I stepped out of Grammy's room and I walked toward them. He saw me and his expression shifted. Not to anger exactly, to something more like recalibration. "Ellie," he said. He has never called me that, only Grammy does. It felt deliberate. Softing. "You lied to her," I said. I didn't say it loudly. I said it evenly because I had been preparing what I wanted to say for the last 2 hours and I wanted it to count. I made a decision in her best interest. She asked to go home 3 times. You told her she was coming for tests. She has dementia. She can't. Her neurologist documented decision-making capacity in September. I have the paperwork in my car. The POA is not in effect. His jaw tightened. You went behind everyone's back, I said. You moved her here when she was at an appointment she thought was medical. You packed her things without telling her, and you put yourself as the only approved visitor, which means you were planning to control who could see her. There were 2 staff members nearby now, not pretending they weren't listening. You don't understand the full picture, he said. I think I do, I said. The facility costs $4,200 a month. Grammy's house in Decatur is worth close to $400,000. I think I understand the picture pretty well. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the director. Whatever the director saw in that exchange, it made him quietly tell a nearby nurse to start the discharge paperwork. My mom arrived 40 minutes later, walked straight past my uncle without speaking to him, and went directly to Grammy's room. I heard Grammy say, "Oh, honey," when she came through the door. I stayed in the hallway. My uncle left before the paperwork was done. He didn't say anything to me on his way out, just walked down the corridor and through the doors, and the automatic door slid shut behind him, and I stood there and felt something leave my body that had been knotted up since 4:15 that afternoon. The discharge took another hour. Grammy signed her own name. In the car on the way home, she sat in the back seat with my mom while I drove, and somewhere around the I-280-A5 interchange she fell asleep with her head on my mom's shoulder. I watched them in the rearview mirror. The streetlights going past. I need to tell you what happened after, because people always want to know if anything came of it, if there were consequences, if justice showed up in any form. The ombudsman's office opened a formal investigation. That happened. There's a record now. A documented complaint about the circumstances of Grammy's placement at Sycamore Ridge, the use of deception to transport her, and the restrictive approved visitor arrangement. The elder law attorney filed paperwork to challenge the durable power of attorney. She argued, successfully it turned out, that the document had been signed without Grammy receiving independent legal counsel and without full disclosure of its implications. A judge ruled in January that the POA was invalid. Grammy now has a healthcare advocate appointed by the court, and any major decisions about her care require agreement from both my mom and me. My uncle is contesting it. He will probably keep contesting it for a long time, because that is who he is. But for now, he has no legal authority over anything related to Grammy. Grammy is still in her house in Decatur. We arranged for a home health aide to come 4 mornings a week. A woman named Dorcas, who is 61 years old, grew up 20 miles from Grammy's hometown in South Carolina and makes a sweet potato pie that Grammy has declared the second best she has ever tasted. The first best was her own mother's, which seems right. I have every other Friday off. I still spend them with Grammy. Last week we were watching Jeopardy and she got a whole category right, classic Broadway musicals, and she pointed at the TV and said, "Ha!" like she'd personally defeated Alex Trebek, which she'd been doing for 30 years even though he's been gone since 2020, and she knows that perfectly well. I laughed. She patted my hand. "You're a good girl, Ellie," she said, not looking at me. Eyes still on the TV. I don't know what to do with that kind of love except try to deserve it. I've thought a lot about what I would have done differently. I used to lie awake, going back over the timeline, looking for the moment I should have moved faster, pushed harder, made more noise earlier. The power of attorney in October. The care meeting in November with the PowerPoint, the Sycamore Ridge tour he took her on that she came home from quiet and unsettled. I should have understood sooner what I was watching, but I also think about what Grammy said to me that evening on her porch in January about the way people look at her like they're already saying goodbye. I think about how many people that happens to. How many Grammys are sitting in rooms they didn't choose, in facilities they didn't consent to, because someone decided that their confusion was the same as their absence. She was still there. She is still there. That day at Sycamore Ridge, when I walked into her room and she turned from the window and said my name, I keep coming back to her face in that moment. The relief in it. Not that someone had come to rescue her, just that someone had come to rescue her. Just that someone had seen her. That she was still a person who could be found. I drove home that night with the windows down even though it was cold. March air coming through the car, Grammy safe at home, the city lit up on all sides of the highway. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired and sad and grateful in a way that sits right next to grief. Because they're always neighbors. But I also felt certain of something I want to say clearly, for anyone who might be watching a similar thing happen in their own family right now, from the outside, wondering if they're overreacting, wondering if it's really as bad as it feels. You are not overreacting. The quiet ones, the slow moves, the paperwork signed under false pretenses, the access slowly restricted, the visits spaced further apart, those are the ones that are hardest to name until they're already done. Name them early. Make the calls. Ask the questions that feel too blunt and too confrontational to ask. Your person is still there. Go find them. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately, not in a grand, cosmic sense, just in the quiet, practical way that comes after something shakes you. You start tracing the lines backward. You see how one small choice opened a door that led to a hallway, that led to a room where your grandmother was sitting alone, holding her purse with both hands, waiting for people who were never coming back. My uncle didn't become who he is overnight. That's the part I've had to sit with the longest. The PowerPoint, the key he'd had for years, the paperwork signed in October the Grammy didn't fully understand. None of those were accidents, they were steps. Careful, deliberate steps taken by someone who had decided that control was the same thing as care. And I think the reason those steps worked for as long as they did is that the rest of us didn't want to see them for what they were. We told ourselves it was family. We told ourselves people don't do things like that to people they love. But they do, and the not naming of it is exactly how it keeps going. What I've come to understand is that the things we don't say out loud in time have consequences just as real as the things we do. I didn't ask hard enough questions in October. I didn't push back loudly enough at the November meeting. I told myself I was being measured, respectful, giving the benefit of the doubt. What I was actually doing was making it easier for something wrong to keep moving forward. That's not a criticism I'm letting myself wallow in. It's just true, and I think the truth of it is useful. Because the flip side is also true, the moment I stopped deferring, things changed. The moment I walked into that facility with the documentation in my hand and said clearly what I knew and what I was prepared to do about it, the entire dynamic shifted. Not because I was louder or angrier, I wasn't actually, but because I had done the work. I had the neurologist's report. I had the ombudsman's number. I had an attorney's voice in my ear telling me what was legally actionable. Preparation is its own form of courage. You don't have to be fearless if you're ready. Grammy asked me once, not long after everything happened, why I came that day. She asked it simply, the way she asks most things. No dramatics, just genuine curiosity, like she really wanted to understand. I told her I came because she would have come for me. She thought about that for a second and then she nodded once, like it settled something. I think about the version of that day where I didn't go, where I took my uncle's word for it, where I told myself it wasn't my place, where I convinced myself that the adults in the room had made a decision and who was I to challenge it. That version exists somewhere. Grammy exists in it too, in a room she didn't choose, waiting for visits that were being controlled, slowly disappearing from her own life. The version I actually lived cost me something, a relationship with my uncle that is probably never fully coming back. Months of legal stress, a lot of nights lying awake second-guessing myself. But it also gave me Grammy sitting in her own living room shouting at Jeopardy, and Dorcas's sweet potato pie on the counter, and the way Grammy still calls me Ellie like it's a gift she's giving me every single time. Some costs are worth it. Most of the ones that matter are.